everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is your host, Brian Funk. And today I'm very excited because I've got a chance to talk to Tim Webb. What's up, Tim?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing great, man. How about you?
I am doing great too. It is so awesome to finally meet you. Like, we've exchanged emails and stuff, over the years, but we've both been doing this for a really long time, and this is the first time we're actually talking directly to each other.
Yeah, and I have to really thank you for being so supportive of my work with your site, discord.com.
Thank you. And God, I've like, you are one of the very few people that started before me, and you are still going. Like, there were a lot of people that started before both of us, but they aren't still going. You are like an absolute legend among us in the music community on YouTube. So lots of respect for the just sheer dedication that you've put into this over the years.
Thanks, man. That means a lot coming from you because you're a real workhorse yourself. I mean, you're covering everything that happens in the iOS music world. And
I try to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and so, I always buy through your links to support your work. And,
yes, it's very important. Make sure everybody out there listening, if you're ever going to buy a music app, just go over to Discord and hit the link there because I get a small percentage of all of that, and it all adds up.
Yeah, at no additional cost to you, by the way.
Yes, yes, that's coming out of Apple's chunk. Like, Apple takes 30% of every sale on iTunes. And if you happen to be one of the many people who are somewhat resentful of Apple for that, you can kind of stick it to the man by using my link and making sure that I get a percentage of that 30%.
I like that way of looking at it. Never really thought of it that way.
It's a little ironic that I became this kind of figurehead for music on iOS because I hate Apple. I'm like any good prejudice. I am a second generation Apple hater. My dad raised me to hate Apple, and I do. So I have that animosity that a lot of people in the music community still have towards Apple, which is, that they seemed like they were really on board with the creatives, but then they just kind of forgot all the creatives. So like, I get all that resentment towards Apple, but still, like, there is no better opportunity for music making on any of the mobile platforms. Like, Android is just a no-show. So if you want to make music on a tablet or a phone, you're going to have to go through Apple's walled garden.
So I know lately, I'm just curious to pick your brain on this a little bit. I know you said you do some development work too. So I think from my experience anyway, which is zero in the development world, but with some buddies, that might be like more like computer guys, like they won't even look at a Mac, right?
Right.
But a person like me, who doesn't want to have to know anything about what's going on under the hood. It kind of like does a lot of the work for me. It kind of knows what I'm trying to do a little bit.
Yeah.
Where does your problem with the leaving behind the professionals stem from? Is this long term, or is this a more recent thing with like some of the, for instance, like I'll voice two of my complaints. My audio input jack is not on my computer anymore, and I loved it. I used to use that all the time.
Yeah.
Plug my OP1 into it, my iPad into it. I mean, it was such a useful jack, and they took it away, and it's just such a bummer. And now there's no USB port either, which is another one. But how about you? Like, where does that stem from?
A lot of my animosity towards Apple comes from the fact that they've always had this sort of an attitude where you need to pay us just a ton of money in order to play in our playground. And coming from a Windows and Microsoft and Linux background, I'm like, no, I don't. I got more things over here. Why would I even do that? So I'm somewhat of an outsider in that regard, where I don't want to pay the huge premium for a MacBook Pro or whatever. But there's also their way of locking everything down that really aggravates me. Like, they have to exert just overwhelming control over every aspect of their ecosystems that I feel suppresses any opportunity for developers to be inventive. So that some of that's changing a little bit. But in other ways, like recently, they don't seem to really care about making sure that they've got offerings in their hardware for creatives. Like, they haven't even updated the MacBook or the Mac Pro since that trash can thing. And that was like about 3 years ago or something like that. And I remember, like, I have friends in the industry who were just furious with this trash can thing because they were like, we can't put that on a rack. What are we gonna do with this trash can thing?
Hmm.
So like, I get a lot of different angles from people in the music community who come to Discord and they're like, man, I don't want to get into an iPad because I don't want to get into Apple's world. But if you want to make music on a tablet, you're going to have to, suck it up, Buttercup, and just do it. It's worthwhile. I mean, honestly, like the iPad tablet really is an amazing tablet. It's not a cheap tablet, but it's a really good tablet. So it can do all the other tablety things you want to do, including just, surfing the web on the toilet. Like it's going to give you a really good tableting experience. So I think that it's worthwhile.
Yeah, and not, I don't want anyone to think we're gonna have a whole Apple bashing podcast. There's so much more to
Yeah.
talk about, but it is something like I was always a little curious about. I know some of the later offerings have left a lot of the professionals feeling a little, left out, I guess. With some of the power and the connectability, the customization stuff, which is really no more as far as I could tell. I don't think I can do anything to my computer anymore.
Not
But
without dongles.
yeah,
Lots and lots of dongles.
yes, I do have lots of dongles now. Yeah, it was a sad update. When you get your computer and then you realize you need to also spend another like $200 and things to be able to use it.
Yeah.
Um, but on the other hand, I will say I'm pretty satisfied with the machine itself. But yeah, it's fun to get that perspective from you. There is a pretty funny irony in there, though.
Yeah.
It's the way the world is, I guess, huh? So
It also gives me a good perspective. Like a lot of people will report on Apple News just as part of the Kool-Aid drinking crowd, and I'm presenting a different perspective. I watch every single WWDC and all their events, and then I report on those objectively in a way that a lot of people do not, because
yeah.
they tend to be in the fanboy category. So it's nice to be able to bring that perspective to the community.
Yeah, when I'm in the market for like a new computer or something, and you start watching some of the coverages, you're like, "What?" They're freaking out about some feature, and you're kind of like, "Okay,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
guess I'm not sure
Exactly.
why I should be excited about that yet."
Right. So when Apple says, "Oh, hey, and now the new iPhone does this thing," I will say, now Apple has brought this feature from Android that has been in Android since 2016. It's nice to balance things out like that.
Well, I think that's like one of the things I really enjoy about your site and your whole personality that you've got with the coverage you do on all this stuff is I know you're telling me the truth because it's very common where you'll only like hear good things about stuff. Oh, this is the greatest new software. It's groundbreaking, epic, whatever. But you'll come out and tell us, if you think it's a bunch of shit, you think it's very useful.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing to hear that once in a while.
Yeah, I am an asshole, and I know that. Like, I absolutely just like that's how I am. That's my personality. So I try to use that for good.
Yeah.
Like I try not to go after people that don't deserve it, and I try to, direct my asshole energies towards something productive.
I was just thinking that'd be a great like subtitle for the podcast using asshole for good. But then you said asshole energies, and now I'm thinking I'm gonna have a lot to work with on this one. That's funny, man. Yeah, but it's really is refreshing because a lot of times when people are looking at your site or any of the various sites for gear or apps or anything, they want to know like, is this something I should be investing in or not? Is this worth my time? And it's nice to have someone say, no, it's not. Or it
And
is.
thankfully, apps are so cheap, you don't necessarily have to be worrying too much about the money. But when it comes to time, I'm really respectful of people's time. So I try to be upfront about, maybe this one isn't going to be particularly useful for you.
Yeah, been done before, or you,
Yeah.
you don't need that feature. It's something that I try to like encourage people when I'm working with them, especially in teaching, is that you've really got everything you need already. You have tremendous power in your phone or in your computer right away, just as soon as you take it off the market. And it's very easy to get caught up in like the hype of every new thing that comes out.
Yeah,
And I know
absolutely.
I fall into that a lot, knowing that. So my first encounter with you, and I owe you one really, was when you were teaching me how to use my IMS-20 app.
Oh yes, yes,
The
that was
Korg, yeah, the Korg IMS-20, which ultimately taught me how to use the actual MS-20 when they came out with the mini version. I picked that up and I knew how to use it, and it was mostly thanks to you, honestly. You had a great little series on that.
oh okay. So you found the Everyone Can Play Music series, which
Yes,
is
everyone can play music. Yes.
yeah, that was a really interesting time at that point because we didn't really have things like audio bus and all these other technologies we have on iOS today, where you can easily link up a whole bunch of different apps. So
Yeah.
back then, you were kind of limited to maybe running one or two apps at once. So you had the time to like get really good with them. So I decided
Mhm.
that was a good point to uh, emphasize that. Hey, look, this is cheap. As long as you've got an iPad, most people already did have an iPad at that point. You can just buy one of these apps, and now you can learn to play music. And I feel like that series was reasonably successful. It was so early on, like it was really rough because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Uh, but if people stuck through my bad video production at that time, I think that they got something out of it.
Yeah, oh, I definitely did. It helped me a lot understanding all the different. I think I even learned a little bit about those types of sequencers from your videos because I'd never had any experience with the kind of knob sequencer.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah. That
you know,
is super weird and
yeah.
like yeah, if you weren't around in the '70s, like I wasn't, I had to figure this out on my own. But the old analog sequencer was very unique to
Mhm.
the IMS-20 app.
Yeah, it seems to me anyway, it was like such a bizarre way to think about programming notes. I come from playing guitar as my, real instrument. My start was, and yeah, it just made like almost no sense to me whatsoever to like have these lights going across and I'm turning knobs to change the notes. So,
Wait, hold on a second. I just had a question pop into my mind. I'm going to reverse the table on you and interview you. What gave you the inspiration to start doing your YouTube videos?
I guess a couple things happened at once. I did so much learning on YouTube, you know, um,
Yeah.
so I was learning, and from as soon as I started using Pro Tools, that was like 2005, and I think not long after that, YouTube was out and people were putting stuff up. So I was learning there. I was learning Logic, and I started to like follow these certain characters throughout. There was SF Logic Ninja, David Earl. There was Brian from Triphonic, who I realized I'm watching these guys. They're teaching me lots of cool stuff, and I was checking out their work, their music, and following like what they were doing. And I think I mentioned to you, I teach high school English, so I like to write. I've always enjoyed that. So I wanted to write a blog about just making music, and I decided to do that. And then I made an Ableton Live rack with really by mistake. I had my built-in microphone on my computer, and I was playing through the speakers on the laptop, and I hit the record button, record enable, and I got the crazy feedback, because your speaker's right next to your
All
microphone.
right. Yeah.
And I recorded it, sampled it, made an instrument, and I just put it online. And I think like Synthopia picked it up, and
Nice.
and all of a sudden, like I had like 200 downloads or like 100 downloads in like a week. And it was like more than I'd ever seen for anything I'd ever done. So I got really excited about that. And I just wanted to kind of document my process. Like, I mean, when I started, and it's probably obvious, I'm I really didn't know that much about using Ableton Live. Really, you can probably see my growth as you watch. And it was a funny thing, like to have people think you're an expert on something just because you made a video on it. Like, they're
Yeah.
asking me all these questions. Like, I don't know. I figured out how to use Sampler, and but then it just built. But that's what it was. I realized that I guess in order for people to pay attention or listen to your music, like you kind of have to give them something more than just the music.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd gone through the heartache of releasing things and giving it away for free, thinking that was going to be the magic that did it, but no one listened anyway.
Yeah. And now, I actually started with a similar goal in mind where I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get big as this other thing, and I'm gonna have this platform for promoting my own music. But once I got there, it felt like that would be tacky somehow to just use this platform for self promotion. So I do very little of that. Like there's at least like maybe 11 songs in the entire time that I've been doing this. And I've been doing this for almost 7 years now. So yeah, it felt like it would be an abuse of that power to just be self-promoting all the time. But I'm always interested in hearing why other people started doing what they're doing, because it, I don't know, it's like with me, it was a kind of a random thing. Like this was just after the iPad 2 launch. I'd just gotten iOS 20 and was figuring it out on my own. And fortunately, I had the DS10 app. Corgan released this game on the Nintendo DS.
Yeah, I had that.
So I had some familiarity with the idea. So I was able to transition that to the iOS 20. But I was looking online trying to, at the time, that was a great time at YouTube for just looking up tutorials, and half the time if you type tutorial into YouTube you'd get makeup, but the other half of the time you'd find something new and interesting. Like I learned 3D modeling from some 13-year-old Charv in London, and it was really good knowledge. Like he had a weird accent, but he taught me 3D modeling in Cinema 4D. So I was like, I could probably find some tutorials on here for synthesis, and I found one from Transistor Sound Labs, their Eurorack modular maker.
I'm not big in that world, mostly
Okay.
because I'm afraid I will never get out of debt.
Yeah, same here. You see my studio, there is not a module in here because I know where that ends.
Yeah.
But one of the ladies there, Zoe, had done this video showing how to make this very complex and rich noise patch, but she's using like, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000 worth of Doopfer modules to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hold my beer. I'm gonna do this in iOS 20 here for $20. So that was the whole impetus for my very first video. Was this? It's awful. Don't go back and look for it. But it's just me talking into my microphone from the Rock Band video game, and using a webcam pointed at my iPad as I talk through building up a fairly complex noise that sounds like a wind or something like that. It's like what it ended up being was meaningless. What it ended up building, though, was this whole Discord brand, because there was a lot of people that were interested in that. And I'm like, hey, that's really cool. I'm used to having like 2 or 3 views on my videos. Now this one's got 200, something like that. I'm like, all right, I'm in business. And I just built on that like immediately. Like I was like, okay, strike while the iron's hot. I started just doing whatever goofy thing came to mind. Like I thought, you know what, I've got the original Native Instruments machine, or Machina, sorry. And I figured I could plug that into Rock Band, because Rock Band had this MIDI input thing. So I did that. I just hooked it up to play Rock Band from a Native Instruments Machina, and it worked, and it was kind of cool. So I did a video of that, and that got picked up by Synthopia, and that was my launching off point too. Like once you hit Synthopia, you've made it.
Yeah, I think we had a similar kind of thing where that one video happens, or in my case, that video with the rack. And I was like, oh, I'm doing this every week now.
Yeah.
And I immediately jumped right into a weekly release of packs, just because, for one, I mean, I enjoyed it and it was fun, and I knew it would keep me working and making music all the time. But yeah, I was just so psyched that anyone cared about anything I had to say yet.
Yeah. I imagine you get a lot of people that ask you over the years, how do I start doing a YouTube channel? And the answer is just start.
Yeah.
Like, when you start, you're going to be awful at it, but that's okay. Everybody's awful at it. Like if you want to go back and look at youtube.com/discord, DISCCHORD, you can go back to my very early videos. They are awful, just god awful. But every single video that I produced, I was always trying to make better than the last one. And over the years, I got used to, talking on mic, being comfortable in front of the camera, and also just, knowing my shit. Like I learned so much along the way that I can just be thrust into any kind of situation, like being on a podcast, and I'm ready to start talking, because it's something you practice every week, or once or twice a month or whatever, as long as you're doing it over and over again, you're eventually going to get good at it. So for anybody out there listening and wondering how you can be a YouTuber, it's just a matter of starting.
Yeah, dude, you're so right because I mean, I get that all the time and I hear it, and it's not even just music too. It's a lot of things. How do you get started? How do you and like you got to just go. You got to just jump in and start. And we're both kind of saying the same thing. We didn't know where we were going. This isn't a grand plan, and I'm halfway down my 20-year. I have no idea. Even next month could be the drastic turn in direction. But yeah, you got to just get started. And the good news is when you do get started, like there's really not much to worry about anyway, because no one's watching, no one's paying attention. And it's
Yeah.
it's like a funny feeling that like I get when people say, oh, what should I do? I want to release a track, but I'm not that good yet. And it's like, well, what do you care, man? Your grandma's not even gonna listen to it. Just do it. Just work at it and just move and keep going. Yeah, I think that's like the best advice on a million things, honestly, not just making YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Just get going. Yeah, so you've like I said, you've been really huge for me as far as like keeping up with what's going on in the world of iPads and also like in an honest way. How about you? Like, just today, you've got. I'm looking at your site. You've got a good like number of posts that came out today. And by the way, thank you for shouting out the podcast I did with Matt Fetcher on
Oh yeah.
Audio Kit.
That was a really good interview. Like I listened to that, and I'll be honest. Like a lot of the stuff that I posted in Discord, I don't have the time to watch all of it, but I listened to all of that last interview with Matthew, and that was really good.
Cool.
So
yeah,
I'm happy to follow it up here.
He was pumped, full of excitement. So he was great to talk to. He's he had a lot of good energy. But yeah, like today, like you've got like I'm just scrolling. And it's like roughly a good 10 posts that you put up. What's the secret? How do you stay so productive? Because this is day in, day out, all the time. I never see you take a break.
It is. It's every single day, Monday through Friday. I keep myself on schedules like that. Like I say to myself, this is what I'm going to be doing at this time, and that's actually something that I've learned over the years being self-employed in other fields. Like I've had businesses that have failed left and right before this, but one of the businesses that succeeded before this was being a dog walker. Like I was a professional dog walker for nearly 10 years, and that taught me about the importance of scheduling, because if you fuck up your schedule there, a dog is not going to get out to pee, or a dog is going to be, isn't going to be fed or whatever. So when you have a living being on the other end of the scheduling decision, you really stick to it. And I think that that's been a great help for me for time management, because even still, I work around a similar schedule that I had way back then when I was actually kind of moonlighting doing Discord on the side. It just kind of worked out that way. Like I would develop one thing and then add this schedule on top of the other schedule and make it fit and move things around, but always making sure that I was giving everything its own time block. Like at morning time is when I wake up, I have a couple of coffees and I start writing on Discord. Like it's just a routine for me. I can't even imagine waking up on a Monday and not immediately down in a couple of coffees and starting to write on Discord. And that ends at around 11 o'clock my time is when I try to get that posted. So that works out great for the rest of the world, because now people in Europe who are getting home are able to check it out. And people who are on the East Coast that are, trying to skive off at work, they've got something to read. And so it just kind of works out well to have that kind of schedule. And now I've got the whole rest of the day, right? That's a danger. Okay. There's a lot of people. I know I've talked to several independent developers who say, when I express how busy I am, they say, oh, come on, Tim, we both know all you do is play video games and masturbate all day long like the rest of us. And I'm like, no, like that's not how you do a productive self-employed business. Like that, it just doesn't happen. I can tell you with all sincerity, between the hours of 2 and 7 every Monday through Friday, I am not masturbating or playing video games, because that's that extra work hours, the extra work hours I have in a day after, I've been working out or whatever after I've got Discord out, I've got a couple hours to decompress, eat, and then it's back to work. Like
Hmm.
at 2, I try to get back here in the seat and I'm doing something else. I'm working on the next thing. It's always a matter of keeping yourself in this, as long as you keep it as a rhythm of just doing the next thing and doing the next thing, it's as simple as walking forward, left foot, right foot. It's just a matter of keeping yourself moving on a schedule.
Right, right. That's a great point because I think it's very easy when you think about being self-employed. I'm on my own schedule. I can do it. Yeah, we could go out in the morning. We can do this. We could stay out all night. You have there's no one that's going to tell you, "Hey Tim, you're late for work today,"
Yeah,
which is a nice thing, but that's also sometimes the problem. That's what I mean. The fact for my real job, the fact that the day starts at like 7:20 in the morning, I have to be there. I don't have a choice. If I'm not there, I'm not going to be there ever again. Pretty much.
yeah,
So it's with like our art or our passions, it's very easy to kind of wait until you feel it. I'm motivated. I've got the inspiration now. And ultimately that comes so rarely that you never wind up doing anything.
right.
Hmm.
Like it's so easy. Like I remember in my early 20s, I was a complete fuck off. Like I would just kind of do whatever. I was very much a dilettante. I would just kind of dilly and dally through a lot of different things, and that's why all my previous businesses failed. Like I was trying to do independent software development and consulting and all these other things that I wasn't putting in the amount of effort it really needed in order to sustain that as a full business. I get a
Mhm.
contract here, a contract there, but I wasn't doing the stuff that necessarily perpetuated it. So I learned the hard way. You've got to maintain a constant pace in order to keep things going.
Yeah, and you do that with your schedule. You're just doing it no matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah, so important. Um, as much as this is like a fun thing for a lot of people, and it doesn't happen unless you make it happen. It's a lot of grinding, as they say, right?
Yeah. And especially if it is a fun thing and now you're starting to get paid for it, it becomes a job. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't matter how much you enjoy it. As soon as you get paid for it, something in your brain clicks and now it's a job. And now you might not want to do the fun thing anymore because it's a job. And I've had that happen to me with a dozen hobbies that I've tried to turn pro on. It just is a fact of life. Your brain switches things. It's a job now, and you've got to be able to keep yourself moving, even though it becomes a job.
Yeah, it's true. And now, like, maybe you don't have the freedom to pursue it in the exact direction you want to necessarily because of that. People want you to do a certain type of work.
Yeah. Yeah. You certainly have to keep expectations in mind like that. Yeah.
So, how is your motivation factor at this point? You've been, like you said, you've been doing it a long time now. Do you ever get tired of finding out what new app just came out or who's put out a cool new video, showing you a little jam with,
Y-
the latest apps?
That is a really good question. Honestly, I'm still engaged very much with the iOS music making community because of the innovation we see there.
Mm.
Like it's not just oh, here's another app, or here's another synth app. Every single one of these things is slightly different. Like today,
Mm.
there was this crazy new modular effects app from the maker of Elastic Drums. Like, what in the hell does a modular effects app even do? Like, there's all these crazy videos trying to explain it because it's just this really like out of left field kind of thing that I wasn't expected.
Mm.
And now there's a new thing to be excited about. So no, I have not had any kind of like burnout or anything like that with it because it always seems to be throwing some entirely new exciting curveball at me.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There's quite a bit of innovation. I was looking through your site at the app 8-Bit Conservatory that just came out, and it caught my eye because it looked like The Legend of Zelda or something
Yeah,
like that. And it's like an 8-bit type video game where it teaches you music and ear training and things like that.
yeah. I thought that was really interesting when I spotted that. It's caught my eye for the exact same reason. Oh my God, this looks like Zelda, and wow, it's Zelda with music theory. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Who would think? And I think there's like a real untapped potential in video games as educational tools like that. and I was pretty psyched to see this one pop up. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, like you and I look like we're about the same age. So you remember things like Math Blaster and all those other awful games that they tried to use to teach us math?
You go to the computer room at school.
Yeah, exactly, right? God, all of them were terrible. So I understand why most people haven't been trying to find ways of teaching with games because they, aside from Carmen San Diego, which only taught me how to read from an encyclopedia, I didn't really gain a lot from any of those, and I can see why people aren't pursuing that. But this was actually approaching it from an entirely different angle, where instead of like making the education the point, the gameplay is the point.
Mm.
Like it has the gameplay elements from all those classic 8-bit era games, so it's still got the fun bits, which are the important parts of games. It just happens to be teaching you music theory while all that's going on, which seems like a great approach. Why hasn't anybody ever thought to add the fun to the game that was supposed to teach you?
Yeah, you're right. Those, there's at school now, most of the computers are like kind of they're really tied down with where they can go on the internet, lots of blocks. And
I bet.
I mean, truthfully though, a lot of what it does is just keep the teachers out because the kids are always the first ones to figure out how to get to this site or that site. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to go on a site and it's blocked, and I ask a kid in the class and like, just go type in, and then they got me on the site. It's hysterical. But they'll play this site. It's called Cool Math Games, and it's just like the bottom of the barrel, like the only thing they can get on to play a video game on the computer. Like they would never play it if the other option wasn't write an English essay.
Right. Out of sheer necessity, I will learn math to avoid doing my other homework. Great.
Yeah,
That's
really lousy video games with basically no educational value. But yeah, you're right. Like to get the fun in there first and then pull in some of the educational stuff is cool. And
yeah. And this guy is only charging $2 for this app. Like there's no in-app purchases or any of the other weird stuff that people do sometimes for pricing. This is a full game that teaches music theory for $2. And I'm gonna make some wild assumptions based on the graphics and stuff. It looks like this guy did it alone. Like this one dude just did this whole thing and is asking $2 for it. That's just an amazing, like, feel-good story from the world of iOS development.
So one of the things about the app is that it is only $2. And I'm sure you can tell us it's clear it looks like an extraordinary amount of work went into it. And to only be getting like the $2 pay, I wonder, and this is actually something I asked Matt Fetcher on the show about his, about Audio Kit Pro, where they're providing all these free open source things for people to use. Is there a risk? I mean, we've gotten so greedy with like iPad apps being so cheap. And, if a $10 app comes out now, everyone's kind of like, oh, come on, $10. And it's basically like a full featured DAW that you would spend $500 for on your computer. I wonder what your thoughts are on like, everything is so cheap. It must be so hard to be a successful developer in this world.
It absolutely is. Like it's incredibly hard for especially niche developers like music app developers because not only are you dealing with the insane prices people expect, like if you were to charge, if you were to release an app as a VST or AU, you could probably get $300 for it. But as soon as you put it on an iPad, people lose their shit if it's more than 15, right? And that weird brain dichotomy doesn't make any amount of sense. Like, especially like, let's take $5, for example, as the price that a lot of people charge for apps. You can't buy a goddamn thing for $5. You can't even buy a quarter. I looked this up. You cannot buy a quarter pounder with cheese from McDonald's for $5. That's $5.67 or something like that. Like you cannot get anything for $5. But for some reason, people demand that they should get an app for $5. And I know that that's hurt a lot of developers. I know people like. I actually, while we're on Skype, I look over, I see my contacts. There are people on here that aren't in the music app development community anymore because they couldn't make it work financially. And that's really sad. Like some of these guys were really good people that were trying to do this thing, but they couldn't make it work financially. And there was no amount of kicking and screaming that was going to get people to pay more for apps because they all got stuck on this as a pricing model. And I think that is I, that's actually not Apple's fault. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. Because when apps first came onto the store, the only thing that we had to compare them to were all the ringtones and like MP3s and stuff that you could buy on iTunes, and all those were $1.
Right.
So naturally, all the fart apps and all the other nonsense that people originally released on the iPhone were $1 too. So that was just this kind of natural crossover. If you wanted something on your phone, it was $1.
Yeah.
And then when the iPad came out, well, you could try to charge $5, but let's leave it there, buddy. It hasn't moved a lot since. Like a lot of developers are trying to make it move, but it hasn't really. And there's a whole unspoken side of this. And Matthew's among the developers facing this. Is that once you've released one of these apps, you're now expected by the community to provide just tons and tons of support, tons of support that
Free updates
takes up
for
time.
life.
Like you and I understand this. Like I'm sure you get lots of emails from people trying to understand how to do this thing. Like it takes up so much of your time to reply to every single email because you don't want to be terse about it. You know, you don't want to just like blah. Here's the quick thing. You want to explain the problem, but that takes up so much time. And if you've got a popular app, oh my God, you're never going to have any more time to ever write another app because you're always going to be writing these emails. I understand that people don't appreciate that. And I wish that I could make them understand. Like I just went on about how by scheduling is so important to me. It's also important to all these developers to not have to spend all this time on the support, but there isn't an alternative available to them. There really isn't. Like if you don't provide the support, then everybody just gives you 1-star reviews on Apple.
Yeah.
So
That'll kill you.
yeah. So that combination of huge support costs on top of the small initial fee is a killer for a lot of developers, unfortunately.
Yeah, and like you said, if 8-bit Conservatory was made by just one person, clearly a tremendous amount of work went into it, and now it's such a good price. It's hard to say no to it. I mean, where does it go from there? If it's going to be, well, we need updates, we need new features, we need this, we need that, or I have a question, how come I can't do this or that, or
Right.
my iPad doesn't have enough memory, how come I can't download your app? Like questions that they probably get a lot of questions that aren't even their fault, or it's well, your settings are off on your but
I'm certain that they do. Yeah.
yeah, I just I worry about the iPad and iOS app world for that reason, because it is like ridiculously cheap. And I love your example of just the real world comparison of a quarter pounder, because most people probably think nothing of that purchase. But as soon
Right.
as it's the app on the iPad, which must have taken the time to make thousands of quarter pounders, I
Yeah.
just I don't know. Like sometimes the consumer is its own worst enemy.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too negative about this because there's another end of the spectrum, which is the amazing opportunity this does present to musicians and just the regular people that show up and see these things. They get to explore whole worlds of new music making opportunities because of the low price.
Right.
Like that's been like a big thing for me. Like when I started off this, I was a poor dog walker. Like I didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't buy all these fancy VSTs. I had very little hardware. Like I had a Electribe and a one Machina. Like that's it. I couldn't afford any VSTs because I was maxed out on Ableton and I did get Native Instruments Reactor. That was it. Like I could not afford any more VSTs. And then apps show up. It's like $5. I can explore this. What? How is this possible? This is amazing. I love this. Oh my God. And it just kept on building up from there. Every single month, it seemed like there was a new amazing app, and it was like $5 or so to explore. So that is still alive and well for people to get into this in a way that they couldn't before. Like you can't just show up and like, if you were trying to go really cheap and do this on a desktop, you could get like maybe Reapers and maybe some of the free VSTs and stuff like that. But that's probably not going to get you very far, and you're not going to enjoy the experience. Whereas on an iPad, you can just keep on finding new and exciting things to explore at a relatively cheap price. Like if you subtract the price of the iPad,
Mm-hmm.
$100 would buy you just a world of amazing apps.
Right.
So at pretty much any cost of living, you can fit in $100, maybe amortized over the course of a year or something like that. You know, you buy one app this week on this paycheck, and you get really good at that app, and then by the time you get your next paycheck, you're ready for the next app to explore.
Yeah, it is. It has opened some incredible doors, and I myself have gotten to play with things I've never would have gotten my hands on. And as we were talking about the IMS 20, you know, before Korg released the MS-20 Mini, like that was the closest I was getting to an MS-20
Yeah,
on there, and that was I think $20, and that was a big purchase. You know, oh my
yeah,
God, I'm
oh
about to
yeah.
lay out $20 for this insane synth right here.
I remember that purchasing decision very, very vividly
Yeah.
because I had to put my first. I got the iPad 2. That was my first iOS device. I had to put that on a credit card, and now I've got to put $20 more on a credit card, and all this on a dog walker salary. I'm like seriously, questioning some of my purchasing habits here. But I'm glad that I did. That was a pretty good investment.
Yeah, it worked out right.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's incredible. It's as much as it's opened up so many doors, it also I hope it's sustainable. That's all I guess I'm getting at. You know, I think there are a lot of people doing a lot of great work and making some amazing tools that are really probably making a pretty good impact on just music in general and what we're hearing and how people are making music. So yeah, I think what they're doing with Audio Kit Pro is great because I think that's going to help developers quite a lot in producing their apps.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's a bright future, but that is a concern I have too. You know, because I've heard the same stories as you of many developers having a really hard time making it worthwhile.
And honestly, it certainly is possible for us to find some sort of happy balance where it is sustainable for independent developers to keep on doing this, full time rather than kind of moonlighting with it. But um, it's going to take the users accepting that they're going to have to pay a little bit more. Like I'm not talking about paying VST prices, right? It's not going to be anywhere approaching that, but it might be that you do have to begin to expect some apps to be arriving at $20 or somewhere around there, like
Mm.
it, in that ballpark, maybe 15, maybe 25, somewhere in that area. I think would probably be just a little bit more to be an incentive for people to continue to develop things. Because if you've noticed on your iPad, lots of apps just kind of disappear, and the reason for that is Apple expects not only their 30% of the cut, they also want $100 every year to keep
Yeah,
your
yeah.
apps on the store. So if your app isn't selling enough to pay Apple's, I forget what they call it, the developer
The developer toolkit or something like
fiat,
that. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, it's yeah. If you're not making enough to pay that, it's hard to justify paying that to just keep your apps up there that people obviously aren't appreciating enough to even buy. So yeah, it's kind of a tough scenario where we got to get over that hump where developers feel like they're being rewarded for their efforts.
Yeah, I kind of ran into that myself personally. A buddy of mine and I produced a bunch of songs for kids with learning disabilities, mostly like autism, to teach like proper social skills. Like, you know, some of the songs were things like "Our fingers don't belong there," "Keep your hands to yourself." But they were like, he's a special ed teacher, so a lot of the motivation for the songs were off actual things that have happened to him in the classroom. And what he would do is he would take out his guitar and sing to them. And then it's better than scolding, right? Like, hey,
Yeah,
don't do that. Instead, it's like, let's sing a song together. And in the song is the message I want you to get.
that is brilliant.
It, I loved it. I loved the idea. And we made an app. Well, we didn't make it. We actually had Nuno from Imaginando created it for us. And the problem that happened though with us is like we weren't really selling any, and look, we
Mm.
weren't going nuts with promotion either. We were kind of hoping like somebody would find it and share it on their viral account. Pretty much that was our marketing strategy. But
Man,
uh,
I don't remember this. So you didn't even tell me about it. I must have missed it. Like this sounds awesome. I wish I had promoted this.
well, it's no longer on the App Store now because we weren't getting enough out there to justify that cost.
Mm.
The $100. on top of that, though, what happened is like there was a couple times where we had to make updates to the app to be like
Mm.
compliant with whatever the Apple Store regulations were, which I mean, I have no idea what that was, but we just couldn't get it done. So it's no longer on the store, and it just like you said, it's one of those apps that just poof disappeared. And
Yeah. God, I actually have taken up development myself this year. I taught myself Swift to eventually I want to be able to make my own music apps, but making
mhm.
music apps is really hard. So I started off much smaller with a little app that does more developer stuff. It's just a thing that pings API servers and gives you a response on your phone, which is super nerdy and super handy at the same time. So if you understood any of the words that came out of my mouth, you might want to check out API Hack on the App Store. But if you didn't, the important message here is I learned Swift in programming in order to better understand the whole ecosystem. You know, not just me shitting on other people's work, but to actually understand the process of making these apps. And man, it sounds like whatever this was a few years ago, so they probably weren't using Swift. So I couldn't just pick it up. Like I've got a developer account right now. I'd try to save this if I could, but if it's an Objective C, we're shit out of luck. I don't.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, it must have been probably 3 years ago that we released it. So yeah, it needs like an overhaul of some kind anyway.
Man,
But
that's a real shame. Like I wish I had known about that at the time because I would have absolutely loved to cover it. I love covering things like that because that's a whole other area to iOS music making that some people don't know about. Is that even blind people can use iPads?
hmm,
Like I know that sounds super counterintuitive, but blind people can make use of iPads thanks to Apple's. God, what do they call it?
the
It's
accessibility, right?
Yeah, they've got a name for it. Their accessibility thing is really good. Like I've actually done beta development where I've got to close my eyes and feel around on the iPad to see or to hear rather what instructions the user is getting, and it's really weird experience as a sighted person to have that kind of thing because your brain is not wired for being instructed that way.
Hmm.
But for blind people, they can totally get around in these apps. It doesn't matter how complex the app is, as long as it's well designed with the accessibility in mind. They can just fly around in these things. So
Wow.
the same is true for people with mobility issues. As long as they've got some mobility, they can still get something done. And it takes consideration on the developer's part in order to achieve that.
Right.
But I really like to highlight that sort of thing. And one of my nephews has autism, so I would have been all over trying to promote anything that is helpful in that regard.
Well, I could send you the songs. we, we
Yeah.
we have like karaoke style videos if you like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
That was the whole app. It was like karaoke style videos just to sing along. And yeah, we may at some point try to give it another push. I don't think it's something that's going to go out of style, really. And it was a really fun project, honestly, to work on, to make music without really having to worry about if I was being artistic or like, edgy or cool. Once that went
Yeah.
out the window, even if you don't think you have that in your head, I think every time we sit down to make music, we want to do something like, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
this isn't
I
artistic. And that was taken off the equation and the songs just poured out. It was like, this song has to do this. And we were just making like songs that were catchy, that had a little message. And it was so much easier because you were able to take your understanding of like songwriting and making music and just apply it to something without any of those kind of like like our own self identity wrapped up in it,
yeah.
all that kind of nonsense that our ego is probably responsible for.
That sounds really fascinating. I've never had an opportunity like that. Now I want to think about how I could try to generate that on my own. Because I've got a similar sort of issue where, like, you're talking to me, I seem like a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but my muse is just bleak. It is absolutely dark. So whenever I start writing music, it immediately takes on this really dark tone that is interesting for me to explore artistically. But it's definitely like me being me in a way that's not necessarily as fun.
Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah, like we weren't afraid to be cheesy. We weren't afraid to
Right.
use like
Yeah.
a simple 1 4 5 progression. Where things like where you might say, "I need a more interesting chord that shows that I understand my theory." It was none of that. That wasn't the point. So it's fun to like just have that kind of release. Where it's like, yeah, just play, just have fun, just do it. But yeah, I think we do put like pressure on ourselves. I know I do. I mean, I always feel like it has to be like intelligent enough, or some sort of twists, to make it like worthy or something.
I used to have that. I got over that. I know exactly what you're talking about. I got over that by just not giving a fuck anymore. Like, uh, a lot of people have been talking about mental health issues, and I'll talk about mine right here on this podcast. 'Cause what the hell, right? I have anxiety. I have
Mhm.
social anxiety disorder, and I take mirtazapine, which is a drug that is in the same sort of class as Xanax, but it doesn't knock me out like Xanax.
Mhm.
So that's given me the opportunity to just not care about a lot of things,
Mm.
which is a great feeling because it's like the if you drink, you lose some inhibitions. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that, except without being drunk. So
Right.
that has been extremely liberating for me to get out of that. Oh, I've got to show off my music theory, right? Like I absolutely know that thought process. Like I had that for years, and now that is just gone by the wayside. There are some side effects to this. Like one, it knocks me out, so I got to make sure I take it before bed. And the other is that I've got to be really careful about my sense of humor because I now have to wonder, is this funny? Like when I'm writing something, is this funny to people who aren't on anti-anxiety medication? Usually the answer is yes, but there's a few times I got to question myself. Like, when I was doing the article for your interview with Matthew, it occurred to me that now Matthew does his own YouTube series where he's interviewing developers. So there was this guy that I'm used to seeing interviewing people being interviewed himself, and my brain went to Douglas Adams in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Okay.
which concluded with the Galgafrians on prehistoric Earth making documentaries about themselves. And I wanted to tie that into the article somehow. We've gone full circle. We're now making documentaries about ourselves. But it was one of those things where I was like, nope, that's probably one of those things that's only funny to me because I'm on drugs.
That's pretty funny. You've got like a different type of like a barometer or something going on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something you got to kind of figure out. But yeah. So anybody out there with mental health issues, like seriously, it's easy for me to talk about them because I've got a drug that makes it easy for me to talk.
Mm.
But you absolutely should get out there and get help because it'll change your life.
Yeah, no, I've seen that for sure. I mean, it's there's no shame in that. I think it's a great movement we're seeing recently, that people
Yeah.
are not ashamed to speak about things and to just see it as like anything else, having a cold or something. I think we forget like our whole existence is really just like this. We're this machine that works in a certain way, and
Right.
all the parts
Well,
just need to be doing their thing.
that part of you that wants to show off your music theory, there's that same sort of thing where you've kind of like learned like this is the way you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be this,
Mm.
serious musician doing these serious things. And you've also learned subconsciously, if nothing else, that you're supposed to always just be like a stoic, awesome dude that, always cool and confident and all this. Like it's these things that you pick up from media and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
just subconsciously learn that there's an expectation for how you're supposed to be, and that does not include any kind of mental health issues at all. And that's not reality. Everybody's got some issues. Everybody's got some issues. There's nobody out there that you can look at and say, "Oh, this dude's got it all figured out." Like the Dalai Lama, he's probably got some sort of issues. Like everybody's got some issues. It's just a matter of being honest with yourself about them, and then you get over those issues. Like you really can. Like a lot of these issues, people can get help with, and they should absolutely do that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that. I mean, if you're like a kid growing up, right? You're constantly being told what to do by adults. This is what you got to do this. You're not supposed to do that. No, we don't do that. And I mean, all sorts of this isn't like just in how you conduct yourself in public, or if you're a man, don't cry about it, or hide your emotions. There's a billion of these things we're constantly given, right? And then like you get to an age when you realize, holy shit, all these people have been telling me what to do my whole life. they don't, their life's fucked up too. What the hell?
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
they're not perfect. I've been listening to them. They've been telling me what to do, and I think it's the reason why a lot of young people get angry as they like start coming of age when they start realizing like, holy crap. It's something I like to tell my students in high school. I was like, guys, listen, there's something to be said about having experience and learning from people that have been around and done things, but never forget that we're all winging it here. you know,
Yeah.
we
Man, I wish somebody told me that when I was in high school, because I was absolutely having all that angry at everybody kind of moment where, yeah, just pure angst of teenagehood. But
yeah.
man, you absolutely have got to be just like, I know in 20 years from now, you are going to have so many people who are going to write you saying, "Oh my God, you were my favorite English teacher," because I just get that vibe. Like my favorite teacher in high school was my sophomore English teacher. She really gave me the encouragement that made me the writer that I am today.
Hmm.
And I'm positive just from talking to you that you are going to have so many people that are feeling the same exact way.
That'd be cool. It's teaching's a weird job like that because like even like what we do, you put up your video, it's out there. I did that. Now it's posted. Oh, there it is. I vacuumed the floor. It's not dirty anymore. But at the end of the school day, they leave and you're like, they don't look any smarter. I don't know. I hope they learned something. I mean, you just don't know. You don't get that like visual feedback. You don't get like,
Right. Yeah.
and if they pass your test, even, it's like, yeah, but I kind of told them all the answers before I gave them the test. So, yeah, it's weird like that.
I guess the only feedback you would get would be if one of them showed up on Synthtopia. You make it as a teacher if one of your kids shows up on Synthtopia.
Right. Angry comments or something.
Probably, unfortunately, but at least they've got good grammar while they're doing it. Oh God, I screwed up saying good grammar. Their grammar is very well.
Yeah, but it's so true, I think, to like realize that like as everyone, like you said, oh man, and you've seen so many like horribly sad situations in the media lately of like people that seem like they're living the dream, taking their own lives and
Yeah,
just it's everyone is at least as fucked up as you are. I think it's like a
absolutely.
pretty good bet, to think about because
Yeah, for some reason we've figured that out as a society on the fetish level. Like everybody has figured out that they can go on the internet and find you know several 100,000 people that are into their fetish, but we haven't figured out that the same thing about just regular mental health issues, where it doesn't matter what you're dealing with. There are hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people going through those same exact issues that you are.
yeah. Yeah, it's I'm hoping we're starting to realize that and open our eyes to it, and it's nice that there are people willing to talk about it, openly and candidly. With that, like the shame part is probably one of the big causes of like all this because
Yeah,
if someone seems ashamed of it, then like you subconsciously say, oh, I should be ashamed if I feel like that too. But to be like open about it, it's important. Um, it's a little bit of a change, but I've read there's an article on Ableton's website with an interview with this guy Food Man, who I've never heard of before until now. Um,
I've never heard of me either.
yeah, Food Man, which I thought was like an awesome name. But his like thought about like music was so like kind of like I don't care, whatever. I just want to do it, and it was like a really liberating like way of like looking at music. And one of the things he talks about is like half the people tell me what I do is awesome, and the other half tell me I'm doing is shit. And I just think like there's so many ways to do things. It's kind of incredible when you think about how routine so many of our like conventions are with I guess life too, but like just in music. Like it's incredible that we get caught up in like things like he talks about just switching like kicks and snares around and making them backwards, why
Huh.
why are we like that? Why why are we so I'm sure like most, and you see it a lot like in videos when people are making their track, it almost always starts out with like four to the floor kick, or
Right.
there's something, or at least the backbeat with a snare. There's always like this kind of like, okay, like that's the first thing. And
I think that it depends on how you're approaching that, like where you're coming from when you're doing that.
Hmm.
Because if you're coming from that voice in your head that says you need to use music theory, then I think you're going to end up with dream theater, which some people like. Lots of
Hmm.
people love dream theater. I think dream theater is super overrated. I don't mean to throw any shade on any of the members. In fact, Jordan,
Jordan Rudess.
love Jordan, great guy, but dream theater shit. All right, it's just so overrated. It's so pretentious. It hurts me to listen to Dream Theater because it doesn't have like the uh, that gut, that visceral that is present in other prog music, like Tool, A Perfect Circle. Those are very proggy, but they've still got soul.
Hmm.
I think the most proggy thing that gets really super experimental that I'm into is Queensryche, which has just amazing sound design throughout every single album. And it feels to me like they are coming from a different place than that music theory guy in the back of their head that's saying, show off this major seventh, whatever. It is absolutely just a matter of where you're coming from, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, I actually saw Dream Theater last summer. My brother-in-law is a huge Dream Theater fan, and I always like to joke around with him, like, if you listen to one song, it'll be like 4 hours, and I don't know. But like, I was convinced after that show. I was like, my, I said to him, I was like, in this last 3 hours, I heard more musical notes than I have ever heard in my entire rest of my life put together. it, was, it was just so much playing. I mean, as far as like observing them as like musicians, it was like just mind blowing how proficient they were on their
Oh
instrument.
yeah.
Jordan
Full
Rudess came out
credit,
with this.
full credit to them. Like
Yeah,
after throwing all that shade, I gotta say, full credit to them as musicians. They are amazing. Like these guys are maestros.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Jordan Rudess came out with this. I don't even know what it was. It was some kind of like iPad, like wearable keyboard thing. I think he only used it for like one song, but he came out looking like he just zapped in from like 2198, way out in the future, and he came in, and I was like really hoping he'd use it more. But I hear what you're saying. There's Yeah, that's like a different school of thought, and I think it was never like the kind of music I was very into. Any kind of music really that sort of centered on like, wow, look at how good this musician is.
Yeah.
Never really struck me. I mean, when I was learning guitar, I got into a little bit of that, but it was just because I wanted to learn hard stuff to play. And
Yeah.
so,
To impress chicks.
of course, but you know what I'm saying? Like just a totally different way of listening, I guess. Totally different perspective to approach music.
Yeah. Going back to your example here, this food man, was it?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, if he's swapping the snare and the drum and or the kick and doing all this other weird stuff, if he's coming at it from an angle of like, let's see what happens, then
Yeah.
yeah, I imagine he's got some interesting results. But if he doesn't have that experimental edge, I wouldn't want to follow him in that exploration. Like as a listener, I like to explore that experimental side when he's actually doing an experiment rather than like, let's just make cacophonous noises and call this music.
Yeah.
Like that's not so much fun. But if you have an experiment in mind, then I'm with you. Like let's go on this a journey and into experimental music.
Yeah, from reading it, there's a lot of like, let's see what happens if kind of. That's he's saying like
Right,
that's
yeah.
how I think about it. What would one of these quotes? What would happen if I swapped all the roles of the instruments? But yeah, like some of it, I think I listened to what was on the site, and that's it. So I'm not speaking from anything besides this article, but some of it, yeah, did sound like kind of just like, huh? And I think that was like something they said listeners say, is this even music? But there was a lot of like cool stuff, a lot of like interesting combinations of just sounds that just sounded almost, I guess, like I spend a lot of time trying to make my recording sound cohesive, like things work together, and like this was a really interesting, like that sounds like it was recorded somewhere else, and this sounds like it was a whole other recording. You can even hear like the noise on drop out on the end of the sample. But it was interesting, really cool. I left that article like kind of like excited to play around with some music, which is for me like
Awesome.
that's the ultimate. That's really I think what I'm looking for almost every time I read about or even listen to music. Most of the time, I'm looking for something that makes me want to do it too.
Yeah, like there's been a lot of people that have been on YouTube doing some very interesting experimental stuff, including people that are doing experimental in the traditional four on the floor kind of
Yeah.
patterns, where it looks like he's got all the tools to make house music, but instead he goes off into some entirely new direction. And I'll be honest, like some of it's awful, but even the awful guys that are just doing this weird stuff, they find an audience. Like they're
Yeah.
enjoying it, and they find an audience that enjoys it. So that's another really great thing about YouTube. It doesn't matter how weird you are; you're probably going to find some other people who think that you're just as brilliant as you think you are.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, there's never really, if you were in your neighborhood, it might be hard to assemble a crowd that'll appreciate it, but
Right.
you can find them scattered across the globe and then put together a little a little tribe there.
Oh God, they would run me out of my neighborhood if I started playing my music at them.
I've had I've had people come down and try to run me out of my own house. Rightfully so. I think back to how my parents were. I was the house with the basement with where the band would practice,
Oh, nice.
and I really even as like a guy that likes music and would encourage anyone to like start playing, I still have a hard time understanding how they put up with that. I own one for sure. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of your favorite apps? You spend a lot of time in the world here. Do you have any like favorites, some go-tos?
Oh man, that's
Should I break it down by category, maybe?
yeah. I still love exploring new synths. Like it, even if it's just a subtractive synth, as long as it's doing something new and interesting in that subtractive synth, like even if that's just throwing in a whole lot of extra modulation sources or something like that, it's always a joy for me to explore. So anything that gives me that opportunity to, uh, or that feeling, I should say, of exploration, I'm into it.
Mm.
So trying to pick a favorite is very hard. Like I guess I would say anything that has just a ton of modulation sources, or maybe a matrix mod or something like that. So things like Cassini by Ice Gear is a personal favorite of mine because it's got like just I don't know like 12 or something modulation sources on each oscillator. Uh, there's also great utilities like which lets us combine apps in a mixer.
Huh.
It's it looks like a mixer, but you can load in other apps inside of it using either AUV3 or Audio Bus or Interapp Audio.
I hadn't seen that one.
And oh god, yeah, absolutely check this out. It's AUM. Really, really high recommendation, especially if you've got a lot of apps and you want to make them all work together because you can just slot in effects.
Hmm. Kind of is that kind of like Audio Bus, or is that
Yeah, it's very much like Audio Bus. It's
hmm.
like Audio Bus 3, but it came out before Audio Bus 3. So it's kind of evolved in several different ways. It includes the ability to route MIDI through AUV3. It's like the whole it's become popular right now to work without DAWs or without
Yeah.
computers. It's kind of like that. It's an undaw where it
Hmm.
lets you load in all the things and then you can determine how you want to play with it. It's not opinionated like, okay, now you've loaded all the things. Now let's sequence it all in this linear way. It's just let's load up all the things and now you can figure out how you want to make them interact with one another.
Yeah, that sounds fun and timely, like you said. Yeah, it's like a big thing right now.
Yeah.
The no computer thing, which is certainly fun. Um, yeah, because I mean, you see so much stuff. It must be hard to like when you have time to make music. Are those like the ones you kind of gravitate towards, or is it always like let's do something new?
It's usually the thing that will get used in my own music making is whatever has a particular sound that I want to play with. Like if I'm playing with an app and I'm like, oh wait, oh god, yeah, this is it. This is the sound. Now let's make this sound something. Like that's usually the workflow where I
Yeah.
discover the sound and then I use the app in some structure from there.
Right. Yeah, I've got like a little problem where I've got like folders, inside how you can on the home screen put folders, synths,
Oh yeah,
FX,
yeah,
drum machines. And I think like every time I go in there, I'm like, oh yeah. I forgot about that. It's like covered in like digital cobwebs. And like needs a little dusting off. But it's hard to like remember all the tools you have after a
yeah,
while.
yeah.
It's like such a weird problem now, right? Like my problem isn't finding the thing I need and like seeking it out. It's like remembering what I have and what I'm gonna try to use at this point.
It
Strange times.
you don't want to go from the direction of just a blank slate of like, all right, which app do I reach for? Like
Yeah.
because if you are at that blank state, you don't have any means of making that decision. Like you could say, okay, which icon looks prettiest, because that's as good as anything else at that point. Like,
Right.
but if you've got an idea in mind of the sound you're going for, I think that helps you narrow it down to say, okay, well, I'm looking for maybe an aggressive edge, so maybe I need additive or FM, and I'm kind of feeling like playing with uh, whatever. You kind of break it down from there and decide, oh, okay, well, this is the app that is going to help me get from point A to point B the fastest.
Yeah, it seems like a theme I keep coming back to in a lot of these conversations is the importance of sort of having a direction before you
Yeah.
get started and having an idea and an aim. It's so easy to get lost in just going through your apps or your plugins or your samples or
But
whatever.
that's not to discount that as a work process,
Mm,
and it's in and of itself. If you do start off with a hell, I just got a lot of apps. Let's go explore things. That can also lead you to that point where, oh wow, I've actually made this interesting sound. Like some of
mm.
my favorite time has been spent in that process of just exploring things and finding the sound. Like the discovery can be just as rewarding because honestly, like I imagine most people listening to this are just amateur musicians. We're not trying to meet some deadline for the studio, right? We're just doing this in our spare time, having fun with it. So have fun with the discovery process of finding the sound that you want to use.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of music I really do enjoy is the exploration part,
Yeah.
discovery, exploring sounds. It's probably, I guess that's probably clear if you think about all the like live packs I like to make, playing around with the sampler and just seeing what happens to sounds. That process, more and more, I'm getting into this idea of like the process is just like the reward itself. That's
Yeah.
that's where the fun is, and it's not always just did I finish the track. It's just no, I finished 3 hours of noodling, and that was okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like seriously, like I release very little of my own music, as I've said, but that doesn't mean I'm not making music. I'm making tons of music. It's just
Mm,
it's only for me because I'm
mm,
having fun doing it. And
mhm,
that's the beginning and end of my uh, you know goal and ambition is just to have fun with it. And
mm.
I think that's if you can really get yourself to a place where you are okay with that, it's a great place to be. Like I remember when I was starting out, I wanted everybody to hear my music. Everybody's got to hear this because I'm amazing, and like that's the way everybody starts, right? Is you got to make sure, like you said, your grandma, everybody's got to hear this. And if you can get yourself to a point where you kind of put your ego on the shelf and say, you know what, I don't need external validation for my music.
Mm.
Like I don't need likes on Facebook. What the fuck is a like? What I want is to have fun with my life and have enjoy what I'm doing. So when you approach music in that way, it doesn't matter how you start or how you end, as long as you're enjoying the whole part in the middle, which is your life.
Yeah. You know, oops. Thanks. Um, I find that attitude in your series Let's Play, that sort of just you're just like, hey, we got this app, let's play with it,
Exactly.
and it's
Yeah.
it's a nice like process. But what I've like kind of noticed it's fun to watch you play with the app. That like your way of exploring it is just interesting. Like you'll just kind of have your like own personal reaction, like, well, what the fuck is this thing supposed to do? Why is this here? Or I don't get this, or this is cool, or the excitement in that exploration is fun to watch, and it's almost like a style of music in a way that or at least it's like a way of enjoying music, I guess, from us, like kind of the nerdy creation perspective, to
Mm.
see like a person go through their process of exploring something and like what they're looking for and what excites them. I find a lot of times that some of those videos make me want to play with the app because, oh yeah, he's right, that is a cool way of doing it. I didn't think of that.
I approach the YouTube videos in the same exact way because that is my thought process, or that's kind of my default thought process when it comes to music making. So naturally, that's the way I approach the videos, is just like, let's just have fun with this
Hmm.
and see what happens.
Hmm. I think that's maybe a good way for us all to look at the whole art of music making, right? Let's have fun with this and see what happens.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I'm occasionally pretty embarrassed by the results of some of those Let's Plays, because it's like, well, I had fun making it, but I don't know if it's going to be fun for anybody to listen to what I'm making. So I hope that I make up for it and at least being educational in that instance. Like you know how sometimes you can be just like really in the zone and you're making some great music as far as you're concerned, and then you listen to it like the next day and it's just, what the hell was I thinking? This is garbage. Like, it's weird how you can get into that zone and you can
No,
really feel.
I don't know what that's like.
I know it happens to a lot of people, and
Oh
it's like,
yeah, definitely.
like
Most of the time.
I think of that all of the time whenever I'm watching a modular video. Is like, man, I am sure that is amazing for you, but it's not amazing what I'm hearing here. Like I totally get that's just part of the design process. Is like you are in that zone and you are loving it, but not everybody else is. And I'm kind of concerned about that sometimes when I'm doing my Let's Plays, and sometimes at the end it's like, I could have probably done a better job of making the end result sound better. So I just have to kind of hope that the educational value is enough to support the whole video.
Hmm. Well, I think it was a quote I heard from or read from Lou Reed. He said, "Enthusiasm is contagious,"
Yeah, yeah.
and I really kind of took that to heart in like the last few years of playing live, and I remember like talking about that with the band. Enthusiasm is contagious. Let's have a good time, and it was like a comment I remember getting, knowing we weren't really that good, but people would be like, "Yeah, you guys are just having so much fun up there. It's just fun to watch you." And I think that sometimes worked out better than even people that were much better than we were. That were like like bored about it. You see like that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see the performance where they look like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world.
God, yeah. Especially that became really popular with the millennial group that came up right behind us, right? Like you see that in so many younger musicians where they're just like, oh no, I am way too cool to even be performing my music. Uh, all right, buddy, I'm bored with you already.
Yeah, like it's maybe that's like a weird like cultural thing. Like I guess it puts you in a vulnerability if you are outwardly enjoying something. If someone comes along and say
Yeah.
that thing you're enjoying is stupid, it kind of makes you feel bad and I'm not cool,
Yeah.
I'm not with it or something. But I think the energy comes through. I enjoy them, so whether or not you think they're any good, I think it's fun to like just. Sometimes it just gives you like the sense of like what there is inside this particular app to enjoy. What is the quality? What is the thing that makes this, the 9,000th subtractive synth that's come out this year? Why is this one cool? And it's like, yeah, you're right. That is a cool part about it.
Yeah, and it really is amazing to me every single time I discover that thing that makes it different from the other 900 subtractive synths that came out this year. Like that's part of the joy, right? Is I think that's something you can't fake. At least I can't fake it. I'm not an actor, so I couldn't fake the enthusiasm. So it has to be something where the app has to actually bring some joy to me in order for that to come through. And thankfully, that seems to keep happening. Like there really are a lot of developers who start an app now. They have an idea, like they have something in mind that they want to create into this world. So it's fun to find out what that was.
Mm. Yeah, and there are like some really interesting new ways of making music now, thanks to that, which is a lot of fun. So, I guess we kind of get to wrap this up, but I wanted to ask you maybe just suppose there is someone out there that's looking to get started and maybe trying to find a world. I think you and I are similar in that we've sort of found a way to make our love of music um, justifiable, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, if you do spend, those 8 hours a day working on your music and your projects, you have something to show for it. It's a legitimate business.
Right.
What would you say to people? Because you mentioned earlier that you said I'm someone that's stuck around, but so are you. You've been around a long time now doing this, and I've seen a lot of other sites, especially specifically iOS music sites that just kind of run dry after a while. What advice would you give someone that's trying to find that thing, that way to legitimate legitimatize, if that's a
Yeah,
word?
if you want to go full time with this, my biggest advice is definitely marry rich. Because there's no money at all in music, like at all. But if that's not an option, you're going to have to look for alternative income streams, because there are other alternatives out there. Like there is YouTube that they get you some ad revenue. There's Patreon and things like that. Don't go into this ever expecting to make any money from selling music. It's always looking at all the periphery that goes around that, and look at how you can monetize that without being too much of a dick about it. Like you don't want to be too obnoxious, but you also need to be ready to sell yourself. You need to be, pushing that voice that says, "Oh, I don't know, I don't really want to have to put myself out there and sell like this." But you really do have to keep pushing yourself to promote yourself, and eventually that will lead to a big enough audience that you can get residual income from all these secondary things that go around music. So like there's writing about music, there's doing tutorial videos about how to make music stuff. Like there's lots of other things related to music that can produce
Mm.
income.
Yeah, that's a good point too. The kind of getting past the part of you that says, "Oh, well, I don't want to ask," or underselling yourself.
Right. Oh
Uh,
God, dude, I remember stressing so hard every single time I would make one of those extra little steps. Like the first step was including an affiliate link on my videos. When I was this was before Discord was around. I was doing some videos on YouTube, and I would include an affiliate link. But before I did that, I was having this like meltdown, stressing over, will people think I'm a total sellout now that I'm trying to profit off of these apps? Like, can I be taken seriously if I'm trying to make money off of these videos like that? Because at the time I was doing like app reviews. So does that put me in a position where I am no longer trustworthy? And I had all those kinds of questions floating through my head. But I pushed myself. I said, you know what, that's all nonsense. That's just my anxiety. Let's push through this and just do it. And it was okay. And then I had the same sort of issue when it came to putting advertising on the website. It was like, man, this is going to look tacky. Everybody's going to hate me because I've got ads now. And you know what? That was a necessary thing that had to happen in order for the site to be able to support itself at all. So, you have to be ready to push yourself past that moment of doubt.
I think you have a nice approach to it. I mean, you have it. It's very clear. It's open. It's not like a big secret. Like you have a button on your website that says advertise. People can click on it and they can see like what it would cost if they wanted to run an ad on your site. And I think you've also got like, your links, your affiliate links for the apps. It's like, it's not like a secret. It's not like Tim's like trying to hide it from you and sneak a few pennies here and there. I think it's really nice how you've done that. You've got a nice transparency about it. And even
Thank you.
even as the site has developed, you've gone through like 2.0 version of the site, and
Yeah.
I think what are you on, like 3.0 now?
Yeah. 3.2.
3.2.
I keep on revising it every time.
Well, I like that as someone too that's like working on a website and trying to make it interesting and all that. I think it's nice to get that aspect of it too. It's a lot. Usually that stuff is like kind of under the hood and no one really sees it. No one really knows what this ad is doing there or why that link is here. And I think it's nice how you've just kind of come clean with it.
Oh, you know what? That actually reminds me of another solid bit of advice for people that are looking to do any kind of professional work like this, is that always be learning something new while you're doing this. Okay.
Mm,
So you're not just working, you're also learning. And that's something you're going to always be able to build on later and later. So like right now, if I wanted to, I could walk away from Discord and go be a professional web designer because I've learned how to,
mm,
I learned Python. I learned all these front end Java frameworks and CSS and all this other stuff. Like I had to learn all of that, or at least I made myself learn all that so that I could make my own site my own site. I'm not using WordPress or some shit like that. It is absolutely 100% my own code that is running Discord. And that allows me to do amazing things, but it also gives me opportunities. So now I could just walk away and go work for somebody else making lots and lots of money doing that. Or in my instance, like I actually love what I'm doing. So I don't want to do that. I'm using my afternoon working time that I've discussed earlier. I'm working on my next project, my
mm.
next website. I'm always working on that next thing because I've spent all of the preceding years learning stuff.
That's so smart. And I think it's a great way to like kind of fail proof what you're doing in a way. So,
Yeah.
if whatever you're trying to do doesn't work out, hey, at least you figured this thing out along the way. At least you've
Right.
got the skill. You've built this up, whatever it is.
That
Yeah.
was part of my process when I was starting off on YouTube. Was I just want to learn video editing. Video editing looked cool. I don't know why the hell it was that interested me, but I wanted to learn it, so I did, and that really helped me. Like now I can do amazing stuff in After Effects with motion tracking and all that.
Hmm.
Like I understand rotoscoping. That's not something I would understand if I hadn't spent all this time doing what are essentially amount to free YouTube videos. You
Hmm.
know,
That's awesome. I think that's a very important thing to like throw out there for people to think about. Myself too. Just to make sure you're always adding to the tool belt and tightening up
yeah,
your skills.
yeah,
But yeah, because a lot of you never know where it's gonna show up, I guess. I mean, for me, like teaching, for instance, helped me out a lot when it was time to do like a presentation, on how to whatever it is, some Ableton Live user group or something. And that experience was really helpful when I went to become a certified trainer. Like my strength was that I was used to being up there in front of people doing PowerPoints and demonstrations and working in those situations. Um, so yeah, if you can like kind of make it a gain on some other level too, even if the goal of say you're building your website or something like that isn't your website itself fails, you've at least learned how to build a website.
yeah.
You've learned how to network maybe or how to promote it or I don't know SEO or some stuff like that.
And you really brought up a good point there with just being able to present. Like I had a real problem with trying to speak in front of audiences and stuff like that when I was young. But I pushed myself and I pushed my boundaries. So like I remember I was like 14 or something like that, and I was doing all the after school activities and all that. Just was trying to be a preppy little kid that was doing that. And one of the things was to go around to all the other students teaching about safe sex. So we were doing, this is how you put on a condom, using my fingers as an example. Like that got me over my stage fright. And that immediately got me my first job, which was working for the city of San Jose in their youth advocacy project, where I would go around to schools dressed up as mean Mr. Nicotine Man, teaching kids not to smoke. Like that was like an immediate transfer of doing this goofy thing that I'm doing for free that I'm learning skills up from that I was immediately able to apply professionally. And
Right.
that's just kind of been my modus operandi since then, to just always be learning something new because it's going to pay off later.
Yeah, it's something I wish I would have realized a lot younger. If I think of like all the times I was in situations that I didn't want to be in, or doing something, or working some job I didn't want to be doing, if I could have just had it in my head, like, hey, I'm learning like people skills here. I'm learning this. It finally occurred to me like when I was a waiter at a Chili's, and I realized I'm working on a lot of social stuff right here. I have to approach these people all the time, and I'm learning like how to work with someone who might be upset, angry, or
Yeah.
I gotta like sense if they want me here a lot or if they want me to just leave them alone. And
You must have absolute patience. Like that's such a skill people lack in social situations, is that social patience with one another. You must have learned an amazing amount of that.
there's there's a surprising amount you can learn that has nothing to do with being in a restaurant, being a waiter. And it was a kind of moment where I saw the connection, and it's helped me enjoy a lot of things in life more than I probably would otherwise. Understanding like, hey, there's something I can get out of this. That's not
Yeah.
just like, whatever it is, the tip or, or whatever the like immediate thing is supposed to be.
Now,
That-
that is absolutely like one of those things where you had the smart idea and I had the bad idea. When I was working in McDonald's as a 16-year-old,
I did that too.
the only
My first
the only
job.
way I could find any sort of meaningful value in that was to use it as a front for selling weed. Like I wish I had that idea to think about my social skills and things like that. But nope, I'm like, stick a dime bag underneath the Coke here.
I'm sure there's some kind of creativity at work there.
Yeah, I was learning about economics really early.
Right. Yeah, well, I actually worked at a McDonald's too, and I don't think I could have got a lot more out of that. I just was trying to do as little as possible. I still say that was the most efficient job I think I've ever worked in my whole life.
Really?
I think it was, I mean, every moment of the day, every person had a job and they had something to be doing at every single moment. Like, you were working the entire time, and it was so well thought out, I guess,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
assembly line of making the burger. I mean, they just maximized everybody. I mean, to such a degree, it was pretty incredible. And it was kind of like a disappointment in life to have like that be the most productive, like, efficient workforce. And then just to see everything else doesn't run half as well.
It's nice that you were able to appreciate that. I think most people would feel that that was like exploiting a younger workforce, or in this, today it's exploiting usually a migrant workforce to the maximum efficiency rather than anything else. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, well, and a lot of us were kids in high school at that job, and we were
Yeah.
running a McDonald's because they showed us exactly what to do at exactly what time, and yeah, it was good. I mean, I hated it, but it was good.
Yeah, I absolutely hated it too. Like I was getting into this sort of like passive aggressively adding too much salt to the fries kind of mentality.
Time to go at that point, right?
Yeah. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that very long, but it still haunts me to this day. Whenever I go anywhere, like even if I'm just at the drive-in at a drive-through rather at McDonald's, and I get a waft of the smells in the kitchen there, it immediately transports me back to being 16. And
Yeah.
it's amazing the very strong scent presence you get from being in the back of a McDonald's.
Yeah, I think the sense of smell is a really powerful memory trigger.
Yeah.
There's certain things, certain times in my life that I don't know. Sometimes it's just some odor or fragrance, and I'm like, whoa, I'm back in time, and I'm where I was when I don't know,
Yeah.
first came across that.
And it's weird. Nothing else will trigger those McDonald's PTSD sense memories, but like there's something very specifically McDonald's. Like I don't get it when I go to a Popeyes or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're frying stuff too, but it doesn't smell anything like
Yeah, it's
the
a-
McDonald's
It's a
smell.
different smell. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, listen, Tim, it's been really awesome talking to you.
Yeah. This
Uh,
has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad we got a chance to finally do it. I mean, you've been so awesome in the community, and you've been supportive of anything I've ever done that had even a remote connection to iOS stuff. And I really do appreciate that. And you've also been really supportive of a lot of other people. And even one of my best friends is Mike of Expanding Sound.
Yeah.
You probably know from covering him. We grew up together. And, right off the bat, as soon as he started doing stuff, he was right on your site. And I just thought that was awesome. I was like, you got to check out this site. And, so I appreciate that too. It was really cool to see just the support for the community. And it's from the heart, and it's honest and real, and usually funny as well. So
Yeah, I hope so.
yeah.
God, that's such a risk you take when you try to be funny. You better be funny when you're trying to be funny. Yeah. So
It's
I'm
hard to
very
be
happy to hear
funny
that.
in text, and
Yeah.
but it comes through, and I enjoy it. It's one of the
Thank you.
reasons I've always come to your site too. So, yes, everyone, you got to go to discord.com. It's DISC and then CO. Sorry, I messed it up. DISCCHORD. So there's two C's is what you need to know.
Yeah.
That's
This is probably similar to your Afro DJ Mac name, where it's one of these things you come up with in your early 20s that now you're
Yeah.
kind of stuck with.
it's
Like, I know
100%.
you don't have the Afro anymore in your videos. When I was like 21 or 22, I thought that this was the greatest name. I was so clever because it combines disc, because I was at the time a mediocre DJ, and chord because I was an aspiring music producer. So it's Discord. This is perfect.
Yeah, play on words
but
and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Uh,
now it is a pain in the ass because now there's another Discord in that's like a VoIP thing that I've got to now explain to anybody that I introduce. Hi, I'm Tim from Discord, the other Discord, or not that Discord.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I would change it if I would start again. But yeah, anything else you want to say for our listeners out there?
Nope.
Yeah.
I think we covered it all.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, head over to discord.com. It's where I find out about my iOS apps, really. It's my main source, and I always click on your links. So if you see something cool there, and you want to, as you put it before, stick it to the man a little, make sure you click on those links to download your apps. Tim, thanks so much.
And thank you for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. And everyone, have a great day.